Hello everyone. Today we are going to go over SQL Alchemy in Flask. So we are going to connect to the database and do some operations with database using SQL Alchemy. So to get started, we have to install a package named Flask Alchemy, so that Flask can connect with SQL Alchemy and we can use it to retrieve data and perform operations on the database. So to install Flask Alchemy, you can install it with pip install Flask Alchemy. I have already installed in the virtual environment, so I'm not going to do it again. So let's go ahead and open the file that belongs to the SQL Alchemy. So here we have already gone over the basics, so I'm not going to cover the creation and all of the related basics or routing related basics of Flask. I'm just going to go uh, over the part with SQL Alchemy. So to get started, we have to import SQL Alchemy from Flask SQL Alchemy from the package that we just installed. And there are some configuration parameters that we need to pass for SQL Alchemy to work. So one of them is specifying the database which we are going to use and all of the information like username, password, URL, port, and all of the detail that is required for SQL Alchemy to connect to the database. So in this example, I am using SQLite. So you can see I have passed with the SQL Alchemy database URI, the URI for SQLite, and the database name that we are going to use. So in this example, it is students. There is another parameter that you need to pass. This is just for to make sure that SQL Alchemy doesn't track modifications. By default, it is false, and it will be by default false. You can make it true to enable SQL Alchemy to track the modification that is being made to the database through the object. So to use SQL Alchemy, we have already imported SQL Alchemy, and we have to it is kind of wrapper that we have to wrap around the Flask instance. Then we can use Fla then we can use SQL Alchemy with Flask. So we created an instance that is being written by the SQL Alchemy that we can use to do work with the SQL Alchemy. So to work with SQL Alchemy, we have to create models that will be a reference to the table. So here I have created a student class which will be a model that will be a reference to the students table. So the table will contain ID, name, city, address, and pin code columns. I've also defined one of the initializer method that we can use to creating the instance and saving it to the database. So for this example, I have defined two routes. One one route is going to retrieve all the students from the database, and we are going to show it to the UI inside the index page. And the another one is for creation of the student. It is a simple form where we are going to create the student record and save it in the database. So let's go over the first route. So here I'm using render template to render template, and we can in the render template we can also pass information that can be previewed in the template in past. So here we are passing the students that we just retrieve with the SQL Alchemy student model. So to retrieve all the model, we can perform a query like this. So we have student model, and this query is being provided by SQL Alchemy that we can use to retrieve all the records. So since it is an ORM tool, we don't have to write the query. It will be automatically generated internally. So here we are returning all the student, passing it to the index template, which will be used to render the list in the UI. So let's go over to the index template. So index template is a basic HTML which contains the basic routes and all of the definitions that we are going to preview to the user. So here we have defined the URL for function that that will reroute us to the index page. Then we are flashing off the messages that is being sent by the backend. And here we have another route that will route us to the form where we can create another, we can add students and create new students. And down below is a table where we render out all the student that has been part with through the render template method. So you can see we are accessing the students that has been passed in the render tablet, and we are just looping over and creating the table structure that will be rendered in the front UI. So this is the basic template, basic index template. Let's go over to the new route where we are creating the new students. So first of all, you can see with the request attribute request object, we are checking if the method is post. We only create record with the post request. With the get request, we only get and retrieve the records. So here we only want to handle in the case of post method. So here we are checking all of the parameters that so for example, here firstly we are validating if the user has passed all the parameters or not. If not, then we just redirect the user and tell and provide the information, flash the message that enter all the fields that the user have not provided all the information. If the user has provided all the information, then we are using the student model or instance that we just created and passing all the parameters that has been passed to us through the form, and then we creating the student instance. To add the student to the database, it will just create an instance, it will not add to the database. To add it to the instance, we use the db object, and db object has one session object that we can use to add and save the model that is just being created. So with the session object, we have two methods, add and commit. So add just create a transaction query, and commit will commit it to the database. So with the add, we can create multiple students and we can pass with the add and then commit it with a single transaction. So we are creating one student and we are adding it to the transaction, and then we are committing it to the database. If it is successful, then we are flashing a message to the UI that the record was successfully saved, and then redirecting the user to the index page, which will list down all the students that has been added. If not, if the request is get, then we are just rendering the new template which contains the form where user can add new students. So here we have introduced one new line to create the database while starting the application. So we have a create all method available to us with the SQL object, SQL alchemy, that we can use to create a database if the database is not created. Then we have the basic structure of running the application. So let's go over the new template. So it is as simple as that. It is almost same as index.html, but just the difference is that we are having a form that is being used to pass the information to create the user. So here you can see we are requesting it to the part that is being open. The request.part contains the URL part, the new route. So it will be the same as from the user from the path that we have just opened. So it will be localhost 5000/new. Then we are post, since we want to create a record, we use post method. Then we contain some of the input parameters that we can use to input information. I have not included any validation or as such. In a real application, we have to include the validation also. We can do the same with vanilla JavaScript, but as of now, I am using the simple form and submitting it, since we are not making it JSON endpoint. It is simple REST API. So we have provided all the information that is required. after the providing the information, we have included the submit button that the user can use to submit the student that he want to create. So this is the basic new HTML form. So let's go over and start the application and see how it looks. So as you can see, it starts in port 5000 port. The basic uh, Flask mainly starts at 5000 port, which is the default. You can change if you want. So this is the app that look like if you see in the front end. So here is the list of all the students that is being added will be previewed, and here we have a link to the form where we can add new students, and this includes a link to the main page that if you want to get to the home route. So let's go ahead and add a new students. So we have to provide the name. So here I'm providing John. You can provide whatever you like. With city, I'm creating Denmark. Wait address, it's just 7th Street, and the pin code. And when you are then you are sure, you can click the submit button to create the student. So as soon as the student is created, we are redirected to the root route, and we are previewed with the list of all the students that is being added to the database. So as you can see, the John, that the user that we created, that has been added to the database with the information that we just provided in the form. So this is how we connect with the database. There is various operation that you can do with SQL Alchemy. If you want to learn more what you can do with SQL Alchemy, you can go over to the HTML documentation and see how you can perform various operation with SQL Alchemy. So there is a quick start guide which will allow you to go over basic operations that you can do with SQL Alchemy. So here you can see we have various options that we can. It defines the basic quick start guide which contain how you can define the model, how you can define the engine, create table, and all of the stuff that basic operation that you can do, and uh, more features that SQL Alchemy have. You can learn more about that by reading it.